Hey there, Advanced Math. I know we've been talking about expressions for a while, and today's going to seem like we went in a totally different direction. We're going to be talking about fractions, decimals, and percents today. But we're going to need this for some things we do with expressions starting tomorrow, so we're going to take a little sidetrack and talk about these things. So go ahead and make this the title of your next page in your math notebook, and unpause when you're ready. Follow with me. So we're going to mostly be talking about stuff you already know today. I'm just going to tie two different things we've already done together. Just to remind you about percents, remember that a percent is a ratio out of 100. So 40%, if 40% of students' favorite color is blue, then that means that's a ratio. That means 40 out of every 100 students' favorite color is blue. So a percent is just another way to write a fraction, really. It's a ratio out of 100. And we also talked about turning fractions into decimals and decimals into fractions. So, 1/4 we turn into a fraction by dividing 1 divided by 4. We turn that into a decimal like that. And vice versa, we can go the other way and say, the decimal 12 hundredths is the same as 12 hundredths, and we can turn it back and forth there. So today we're going to deal with all three. Changing all three of these things are just different ways to write a part. 40% is a part, a fraction is a part, a decimal is a part, and we're just going to go back and forth between the three kind of comfortably here. So let's start with a fraction one. 3/4 of Dr. Doblar's class believes that Pluto should not be considered a planet. What are the decimal and the percent that show the same fraction? So we're going to start with, or the same part rather. So 3/4 of students believe Pluto should not be a planet. I want to know what decimal and what percent show me the exact same thing. So to go from a fraction or a decimal, you probably remember how to do that. We just talked about that's 3 divided by 4. Let me put this go under. 3 divided by 4. And that is 75 hundredths. And to go to a percent, we have lots of strategies to change to an equivalent fraction or an equivalent ratio. So we want to know 3/4 for a percent is equal to what out of 100? And 4 times 25 makes 100, so 3 times 25 is 75, so I would say that that is equal to 75 out of 100, or 75%. So we could say 3/4 of students believe Pluto should not be a planet, or the decimal that represents that same amount is 75 hundredths of students don't believe that, or 75% of students don't believe that. All right, let me do another. What if I start with a percent and try to find the other two from there? Says 24% of 5th graders wear glasses. What fraction and decimal show the same part? So I have 24% is what I'm starting with. I want to find the decimal and the fraction that show the same amount. So it should be pretty easy because I know that is 24 out of 100. Percent is a ratio out of 100. 24 out of every 100 students wear glasses. And when I write it that way, guess what? That's the decimal. 24 100ths. 24 100ths. Notice how similar the decimal and the percent look. And that's also the fraction. It's 24 100ths, which I can simplify. I can divide the numerator and the denominator by 4 and get 6 25ths, I believe. So either of those would be fine. So now I had 24% wear glasses, or 24 hundredths wear glasses, or 6 out of every 25 5th graders wear glasses. All right, let me do one more. This time I'll start with a decimal. A decimal is 62 hundredths miles. What fraction and percent show the same part? So if I start with the decimal, very easy to turn a decimal into a percent, right? That's 62 100ths. And you notice I'm saying 62 100ths. That's a percent right there. So 62%. It's 62% of a mile. 62 hundredths, 62 hundredths, 62%. And same thing here. If that I know that's 62 100ths, that's a fraction. That's fine. It's 62 100ths of a mile. I can also simplify that. Let's see. I know I can divide the top and the bottom by 2, and that would give me 31 50ths. I think 31's a prime number, so that's probably it. So a kilometer is 62% of a mile, or 31 50ths of a mile. And there you go. So that's just me going back and forth, 3 different ways to show the same part. Okay? Open your math notebook up. Let's do some together. All right. It says only 46% of Americans voted in the last presidential election. What decimal and fraction show the same amount? All right. So I'm going to start with a percent on this one. 46% of Americans voted. So to convert that to a decimal, pretty easy, because 46%, that is 46 out of every 100 Americans voted, and that is easy to turn into a decimal. 46 hundredths, 46 hundredths, nothing new there. And that also already is a fraction for me to use. So 46 out of every 100, let's see, I know I could at least divide the numerator and the denominator by 2. So why don't I do 2? That would give me 23 50ths. And I think 23 is prime. So 23 out of every 50 Americans voted, or 46% of Americans voted, or 46 100ths of Americans voted. All right, so that's just how I can go 3 different ways to show the same thing. If I start with a fraction, instead, let's say 2/5 of 5th graders don't know how to swim. What decimal and percent show the same amount? All right, so to go to a decimal, I'm going to do 2 divided by 5, which is 2 divided by 5, 4/10. And let's see, so now I got to get to a percent here. 4/10 is hard to get to a percent. So I'm going to go back to my fraction and say, okay, 2 out of 5 is equal to what out of 100? Use all the tools in my toolbox since I couldn't go from that to that. And that is times 20. So that's going to be times 20. And so looks like 40 out of every 100, or 40% of 5th graders don't know how to swim. So you have all the tools to already do this stuff. Nothing new. You know how to get from one of these to another. I'm just kind of reminding you how, and we've never connected all 3 together. So last one, let's start with a decimal this time. A yard is 92 100ths meters. They're pretty close. A yard and a meter are only like 3 inches different. What fraction and percent should it amount? So a yard is 92 100ths meters. So that is 92 100ths, which is 92% of a meter. Almost a meter. It's 92%. And to go to a fraction, I can also do 92 out of 100. And if I were to simplify that, let's see, let's divide both by 2. That would give me 46 out of every 50. Can divide those both by 2 again. Get 23 out of 25. 23 25ths of a meter is a yard. So hopefully that's enough examples for you to kind of see how these three things go together, and just be reminded that you already have the tool to show a part of a whole in three different ways, and to easily move back and forth between any way you want to show the part. All right. If that was confusing, you got really 6 examples you can go watch again. Make sure you have a good command of this. Remember, we're really getting to the harder part of the year coming up here. So I want you to have a really good understanding of this when you get to class each day. So once you feel like you got it, you have great notes taken for your We Do, you're all set. See you tomorrow.